Good morning. This is Victoria Beal with Ohio's LTAP program, and we'll be getting started this morning at 9 o'clock with the webinar. We want to thank everyone for their cooperation in muting your phone lines as you've logged in. Really appreciate that. It does help to minimize on the background noise and make it easier for those who are viewing the webinar to hear the presenters. So we'll be getting started at 9 o'clock. We appreciate your cooperation, and we look forward to kicking off the webinar shortly. Thank you.
I refuse to give our name.
Good morning. For those of you who are just joining the audio, we'd like to ask that you please mute your phone line by pressing *6 on the phone's keypad or using your mute button. This will help to minimize any background noise during the presentation. We will be getting started in about 2 minutes. For those who've just joined us on the audio, I know the others are probably tired of hearing me say this, but if you could please mute your phone line by pressing *6 on your phone's keypad or using the mute button on your phone. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Good morning. I've got 8:59 on my computer, so we'll be getting started in about a minute. This is Victoria Beal with Ohio's LTAP program, and we're very pleased to be presenting for you this morning a webinar that's actually going to be delivered by our partners in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion on the DBE utilization plan. So we'll be getting started this morning. A couple of housekeeping items. If you are just joining us on the audio, if you could please make certain that your phone line is muted by pressing *6 on your phone's keypad or using a mute button if your phone has one. Later in the presentation, we'll open the phone line for questions, and at that time you'll be able to press #6 to unmute your phone line if you muted it originally using the *6. A couple of other housekeeping items. On your screen, you'll notice on the upper left-hand corner there's an audio information box. It does contain the directions on muting and unmuting your phone line that I just covered. Also, if for some reason you become disconnected from the audio at any point in time during the webinar, the conference phone number and participant access code are listed there for your quick reference. Below that, we do have an attendee list, and below that there's a pod. They're called pods here on the screen, which is labeled Files 5 at the top. There's a file in that pod, the LPA Rollout PN13 final version. If you are interested in a copy of today's presentation, all you need to do is click on that file name, and then the system will direct you on how to download the file to your computer. At the very bottom side of your screen on the left-hand side is a chat pod, and you can feel free at any point in time during this morning's presentations to enter questions, and we'll work on getting those questions facilitated out to the presenters for answers. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. I do believe that is going to be Danette who's going to be presenting first this morning, but I may be wrong. So presenters, are you on the line and ready?
Victoria, we're ready.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, and good morning. We are looking forward to a very informative webinar here this morning. My name is Andrea Stevenson. I'm the administrator for the Office of Local Programs, and I'd like to thank Victoria for being our host today. We're going to kick things off this morning here talking a little bit about our new DBE program here at the department. We have Danette Schuler and Tina Collins. Danette is from the Office of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and Tina is from the Office of Contracts. And so they have both been very important in the rollout of our DBE program and will be very important as we roll out the local-led portion of the DBE program as well. Today, the webinar is going to take about an hour to an hour and a half. We're going to spend a considerable amount of time answering your questions and trying to get some information out to you. We're going to talk about several improvements that will be rolled out, and specifically, we're going to talk about Proposal Note 13, how we will ensure DBE compliance, and the changes that will begin on July 1st for the local ed program as we start the first quarter of state fiscal year 17. So with that, we'd like to get started. We also have in the room today Larry Brown. He will be working to approve the DBE approvals for the local program, and he may also be providing some input, answering some questions today, and helping us work through some of the details. We encourage you to ask questions, offer recommendations, and provide questions in the chat room. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And with that, Danette, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Tina's first this morning, and good morning, everyone. So, good morning. I'm Tina Collins, again, from the Office of Contracts. We're going to go through, this should be pretty painless on our part. We're going to go through just the basics of why we're here, who does this impact, largely talk about the DBE utilization plan and the process. I'm going to run through a demo, and then talk about the affirmation process, and then we'll also drill down into the details of Proposal Note 13 and kind of how we got here. Just a little background, and I usually give the 2-minute version of this, but basically what happened is we went through an FHWA review, I don't know, 18 months ago or so. We were found in non-compliance in a lot of areas, so we had to enter into a conciliation agreement with FHWA. The basics of the conciliation agreement are just, it's a timeline, so it's kind of a giant list of things that we need to do to get in compliance, the date that it's due, the scope of the to-do item, and who's responsible for it. And then we are in regular contact with FHWA as the days tick away on the calendar. So our biggest deadline to date that we had to meet was March 31st, and that was making a lot of changes to the ODOT program. We now require prompt payment and certified payroll submission for all federal ODOT projects. So we did this, what we're going to talk about today was the DBE utilization plan we implemented on the ODOT projects last June. So, I mean, I guess to succinctly put it, we had to change our bidding process in order to get in compliance with FHWA. The DBE utilization plan, I prefer to call it that as opposed to PN 13 because there really are. The utilization plan process itself is relatively simple. It's 2 parts. It's getting the DBE commitments at bid time, and then the affirmations within 5 days. Andrea, I think, mentioned this, but it's going to be effective on any project sold after 7/1 of 2016. And keep in mind, it's only it only impacts projects that actually have a goal in them. So it's not every single project. The specifics of the DBE utilization plan, it is a bidding requirement. It's, the responsibility is on the bidders. The bidder submission will come straight to ODOT. The locals in the districts will have access to all the data and the reports, and I'll walk through what's on those reports and the data. If there are any issues, ODOT will contact the bidder directly during that 5-day window. So an issue might be, say the low bidder doesn't meet the goal at bid time, or one of the subs that they submitted can't do the work that they submitted them for. So what to expect? What's the impact of this change? Well, you're going to have an updated bid doc template, which will include, an updated PN13 and have all the requirements in it. I went through with, Andrea and Jeff and their group, and in the first quarter, only 14 projects, and so it'll impact probably 5 to 7 maximum. For those projects, we will target those locals impacted directly just to minimize, any effort or question. Now I'm going to do a demo, and it's the online form that the bidders will use. Like I said, the data will go directly to ODOT, and then it gets reviewed during this five-day period. Give me a second to switch screens here. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background from the perspective that when this challenge was presented to me well over a year ago, and how we were going to approach it with the ODOT project. We bid all of our ODOT projects online. So we basically built this requirement into the online bidding file. So that's where it's a little bit different for the local projects, because the vast majority of those are still bid, on paper. So basically what I tried to do was emulate the ODOT process as much as I could, because it went pretty smoothly. So I'm just going to give you, I'm not going to bore you with the ODOT stuff, but I do think it's important to kind of give you an idea of the process and the growth that we went through on the ODOT side. So this is our online bidding, basically how the contractors bid their projects online on the ODOT side. You can see they just put in their prices and calculate. But the important thing is the DBE list tab. So basically the DBE list is always populated with the currently certified list of DBEs. So say they want to use Ebony Construction, and they want to use them as a subcontractor, and they're going to use them for $120,000. And they click yes that they are going to use them. And what's going to happen is it's going to start building, the list of DBEs up here. So then say they want to use, a trucking company. So they pick the trucking company. They're going to use them. They pick which type of trucking, on-site or supply. And then again, what the price is and how they're going to use them. Now, a couple of caveats here. So say you have a material supplier. We'll use E, but they're not really a material supplier. But they're going to use them as a material supplier. So they put in their, commitment amount, but the system's going to only calculate, they only get 60% credit for that, and the system takes care of all of that. So as you see up here, we've met the goal is like 2,312%, because obviously I didn't put in good data, but that's basically all there is to it. Then they submit their bid and they're done. So for the local projects, very, very similar process. So again, because we don't have everything online, it's built outside the system. So I'm the prime contractor. And I'm actually going to get rid of this address field and make this prime contractor, I probably won't make it a pull down, but just put the contractor name in there. Whatever project you're bidding, this will be populated. Well, it is populated right now, it's just sequential. And then exactly like I showed you on the ODOT side. So do they want to use Ebony or, I don't know, let's try a different one. Eaton. Going to use them as a subcontractor. Now, the reason why there's a no in here is say that your contractor is maybe not going to meet the goal at bid time. In that case, a lot of times what contractors will do is they'll submit every DBE that they contacted just so we have the list, so they'll mark that as no. But this is pretty much the exact same process, or as closely as I could make it to the exact same process that we use on the ODOT side. And then, you know, sometimes we get, I limited this list to 7. I thought that that would be sufficient for the local program, because we typically, I don't know, probably average 4 or 5 unless we're selling like a $100 million project. But that list can grow if we need it to, but that's just what I started with. And then just click the submit button. And then the data gets transmitted to ODOT. So what happens to it once it gets to ODOT? Well, there's a few different things. So one of the things is it gets, immediately we have a report that we run that shows each contractor that bid on a project and what their DBE commitments were. So this list is obviously going to be different for local projects because we're not going to sell 60 projects in one day. They're going to be probably one at a time. But in this scenario, we had literally like almost 60 projects. So if you just break this down to one project, that would be this subset of data right here. And that this will be kind of comparable to what you would see. So this would be all of the bidders. If, for example, you have a DBE prime that bid, like in this case, Buzz bid on a project, what they bid, how much they committed, and what the percentage is. Now, I see how this Buzz one is 53.93%. That's because Buzz is going to self-perform that much of the work. So let me break out here and show you the details of this. Now we also have the ability to give you the complete breakdown. So again, let's just pull out one project. Now in this scenario, for the affirmations, we're only getting affirmations back from the low bidder. So you're going to see, you're only going to see the data for the low bidder. But it's going to list the subcontractor and the dollar amount. This one looks wonky though. Let's do a different one. So here's a good example. So again, you've got your bidders, but we're only really evaluating the low bidder because that's the only one that has to submit information back to us. Here's the contractors or the subcontractors that they committed to. So Buckeye Bituminous and American Roadway Logistics, and they clearly met the goal at bid time. Now, a couple of notes as far as impact for the locals. If for some reason you're going to reject the low bid and go to the second bidder, then there will have to be a communication with that, because then we'll need to get the affirmations from the low bidder. One of the things that is drastically different with this commitment process is it's one of the main goals is it's meant to reduce or eliminate bid shopping. I mean, I don't know if anything eliminates it, but it has gone a long way. So I'm just going to show you the affirmation form and the termination form. So the affirmation form is basically the affirmation form is going to be the other one. It's going to look like this, and it's going to basically show more specifics than just the dollar amount and how they're going to use the contractor. So this comes again from the bidder, and it gets signed by the DBE. This should look really familiar. The description of work is probably key, one of the more important things, because that's actually going to detail what the prime's going to use the sub for. There's some questions for trucking companies. This form needs to be filled out in its entirety, but again, this is a bidding requirement, not a local requirement. And then a section for the material suppliers. And that's pretty much it as far as the process is concerned. If they're going to replace a DBE, there's a termination form, and that's on the screen as well. These links will all be in the proposal note 13 that goes in the bid back template. And again, for the first 3 months, we only have a handful of projects, so kind of minimal impact. Give me a second to see if I can. Presentation back up. And then now we're going to talk about the affirmation process. Sorry about that. Larry's sitting here, so he's going to chime in. I'll just run through the slides, and then he can chime in specifically. But he kind of helped write these slides. So one affirmation form for each DBE on the project. I mentioned the DBE has to sign it. We're going to get receipt of those via an email process for now by 5 p.m. on the 5th calendar day after the bid opening. I showed the affirmation form, but we'll back up. Again, the links are on the website. There's a section for material supplier. There's screening questions that have to be answered. If they're not answered, we're going to reach out to the bidder and get that information, as well as a section for the trucking. I mean, again, if it's not filled out entirely, then you have not fulfilled the requirements of the utilization plan. And that's pretty much it as far as the utilization plan. Danette's going to drill down into more detail with the just the process, the background with good faith efforts and proposal note 13.
Real quick, if there is problems with the affirmations, we will communicate to the bidder, but we'll also keep the LPAs in the loop so you're not, so you know what's going on the whole time. So we will keep you in that communication.
This is Andrea. I have just one comment before Danette starts, because I know we're going to get a question on it. This is just one small component of the actual bid analysis, and yes. So it does not drive the decision for a rejected bid or not, right. But it is one component that the local will take into consideration when reviewing the bid. Yeah, I would consider it like an award criteria. Right. So if you have a checklist of things that you run through to award a project, this is just another item on the checklist. All right.
Okay. So, if at bid time, like Tina was talking about, you send in, or the bidder submits their DBE utilization plan, the administrative reconsideration would be if it was going to go to the second bidder, correct? We do give the low bidder the opportunity to present additional good faith efforts. Probably reach out. Larry's probably the one that actually calls them, reaches out, asks them what kind of documentation do you have, what kind of stuff do you look for, Larry?
We have some guidance on the SBDBE DBE website. Yeah, and we'll pull it up here at the end of the presentation as to what good faith efforts are, and it gives it some good guidance on that. So it is on the website. We'll show it here at the end of the project and what they're looking for good faith efforts.
So he would review that, and then ODOT would get, or in this case, the local would give a written determination on the decision. If you had adequate good faith efforts and you were the low bidder, then you would receive the contract award. So then, if you have a termination or replacement situation with the DBE, then we can, on the ODOT side, and it will be the same for you, we consider that a change in your DBE utilization plan. So if you're going to terminate or replace the DBE, and this could be for a variety of reasons, it could be at the request of the DBE, it could be poor performance, there's various reasons. But it's the form that Tina showed you, it's something that the DBE has to sign as well. And then you would turn that in with your documentation, and we would review it, and then
Give an approval one way or the other. The key thing to remember is on the commitment side, when that DBE plan is approved, that's what the prime contractor is expected to live by on the project. So as we all know, contracts can change, things can change, whether it's not formed or what that was referring to, other issues come up. So when those plans need to be changed, that's the form that we use to change whatever the DBE plan is. So, and all the contractors, which most of them work with the LPA world too, are getting more and more familiar with how that changes. So you can't just terminate a DBE anymore, just willy-nilly. It's got to be approved. So when those are received in here, we review that. We do contact the DBE as well and talk to them, and before we make a determination whether it's approved or not. So.
And that's really the biggest change in that's the biggest change in Proposal Note 13 is the old way, for our side, the old way was we would award the contract to the lowest bidder, and then we wouldn't sign the contract with the bidder until they submitted enough documentation showing they're going to meet the DBE goal. Now, it has to be done up front.
And one thing to note about this is, because it can seem a little bit arduous or a little bit overwhelming, we've had less than 5 issues with this on the ODOT side. So we've sold probably, I didn't run a query because I just thought of to say this, but probably close to, 1,000 projects since we implemented, maybe a little less than 1,000, since we implemented PN13 on the ODOT side, and we've literally had less than 5 issues with it. So I think it's important. There's a lot of words and a lot of text in Proposal Note 13, but the impact has been extremely low. So we as an agency haven't had hardly any impact. The bidders that are going to bid on your project, I think there's probably a 95% overlap from the bidders on the local let side to the ODOT let side. So they're already accustomed to this process, and like I said, I've been using it for almost a year now.
So there are 2 times when we will review good faith effort, and one is at the time of bid and looking at the utilization plan. The other is post-award during the life of the project and at the end. So the way that we monitor the goal real time is our prompt payment mechanism. But the LPA, and you'll still be required to monitor the DB's performance to ensure commercially useful functions. I'm not sure when are we going to institute prompt payment? Do we know?
We will probably talk about that a little bit in the end.
Yeah, okay. By the end of the year would be my guess. Okay, so that'll be later for you, but right now we will still be using the affirmations and that we currently use with the LPAs. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, those affirmations come here anyway. The originals come here anyway. So that process not changed at this time.
Larry tracks all of those and keeps, I don't know how he does it. He keeps track of all ODOT and all LPA, goal attainment. So if we do reject a bid, it would be if there were not a complete DBE utilization plan submitted at the time of bid, or if within 5 days after, if we didn't receive the DBE affirmations, or if we didn't receive, like at time of, from your utilization plan to the affirmation, if something happened where you needed to replace the DBE and terminate and replace the DBE, then you would also have to do that with, within that 5-day period with the affirmations.
Yeah, and there's one of the things that some of the contractors had to learn is that, one of the things is the affirmation should match what the utilization plan is. So if it doesn't, they'll be hearing unless, for lack of a better word. So communication is the key during these 5 days. And like I said, we will keep all the respective LPAs in the loop, so everybody knows what's going on and all that stuff. So, but everything is reviewed. The DBEs are reviewed to make sure they have the proper NAICS codes to do the work that they're doing. So, but if there's, the way a DBE goal is met on a project is through participation and or good faith efforts. So if that's lacking in either way, then they're not being a full project.
And then failure of the prime to carry out proposal note 13 is considered a material breach of contract and could result in further sanctions. This is really all on the prime contractor as far as meeting the demands of the note. I'm going to interject a little bit about some of the things that are coming up. Danette pulled up our contact information, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. But this is kind of like the first step. There are a few other areas that will be impacted per the conciliation agreement. I think PN13 is a good place to start because it's ended up being very low impact. And we'll pull up the webpage here in a second, but there's a few other things that I think will ultimately, once we get all of this information under the same umbrella, will end up being much less painful than having a lot of paper, like certified payrolls, the subcontractors, the prompt payment information. Right now, I think prompt payment, I might be misspeaking a little bit, but largely, I think it gets monitored if there's an issue, like if someone reports an issue, as opposed to it like truly being monitored, just because we don't have time to monitor like every single thing. That's why, with the payrolls, we do like 30% of the, I don't know, do you guys do the same amount on local list, 30%? So what we're starting to see on the ODOT list side is, we just have a lot more ability to do things with the data that we have under the same umbrella, and the contractors don't have to submit the same subsets of information different ways. Since we have all the data, we can run the reports that we need. The other thing that we're working on, like just keeps chattering and coming up, is actually some of the online bidding options. So if you ever have any questions and your agency wants to breach that subject, feel free to reach out to me, because I have a lot of experience in that area and would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. So give me 2 seconds and we're going to pull up that website that Larry was talking about.
In the meantime, while Tina is pulling that up, if you have questions that you would like to submit to the chat room, we can begin working on those for you, and then once she's finished pulling up the website, we can actually open up the phone lines and you can ask questions over the phone if you're interested.
Okay, so here's the, try to close the 13 things that are open, website that Larry was talking about. He's going to talk about this just a little bit. Or do you want to? Not really.
Well, without having to walk me through it, it is on our website. Can you show me? Thank you.
Yes. So if you go to, the easiest way to do it is go to transportation.ohio.gov/DBE, and it's going to redirect you to the website, and then you just go to forms and resources, and it's at the bottom here. Does anyone have any questions? Because I haven't seen any questions other than the one. Oh, I see someone typing. Sorry.
Yeah, if you would like to ask a question over the phone line, just unmute your phone and we can kind of have some dialogue here with the local. Here's the couple asking.
Unmute your phone, just press #6 on the phone's keypad, or press the mute button again if you have a mute button, and use that, and it should unmute your line.
Yes, the locals will have access to the DBE submissions. That was the one report that I pulled up. This is basically the DBE submission, so absolutely you'll have access to those. One of the things that we're still working out was, and it'll probably just evolve over time, is how to push the information out. So once Larry approves it, just make it an automatic push. If you wanted to, you know, like a subscription-based kind of thing. But absolutely, anything we get from them would be open to you guys immediately.
And the districts will be included on that.
Yes. I think I had that on one of my slides. If you look at the PowerPoint, I'm pretty sure I had local/districts. I mean, I don't really see anything like that. Those should be kind of used interchangeably.
And that will be something else as well. The district LPA personnel and the compliance officers they will all be available to assist in, you know, whatever district you're home based in. They've been trained with, you know, with Proposal Note 13 and DBE, commercially useful function. So if you have questions about any of that, you know, feel free to give any one of them a call. So the question,
it doesn't replace, but it basically, you get this information, we do execute the contract prior to getting the subcontract agreement. So isn't that the question?
but only, we'll still need the sublet information in
Prior
the
to when they start work.
Yeah, in the subcontract agreements prior to starting work. We don't need that up front though, as we did before you signed your contract with the prime.
And the goal here would also be to make it so that submission could, in theory, come to like a portal from the bidders, so it doesn't have to be like consistently routed, you know, make it a bidding requirement so it's not another step for the locals. We have another question. Does the contractor submit his DBE commitments prior to the actual bid opening? How many hours does he have after the actual bid opening to still meet at the time of bid requirement? Well, there is no after the bid opening. It has to be by the bid opening. So if your bid opening is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we have to receive the utilization plan by 2 o'clock, basically. Yeah. Will the edge goal requirements have to go through the same process? No.
So those are for state-funded projects only. The DBE is for our federal aid projects.
Right.
Those would continue going through the same process as you have.
All right, those are great questions. We would like to continue answering anything that you may have in regards to the DBE program.
And again, if you guys, I am kind of trying to push this online bidding thing, but if any of you are interested, I'd be more than happy to get the resources to help you get that up and running.
Share with us.
I mean, it is kind of cool. I'm just going to keep rattling for a minute, but it is kind of cool to see the data under the same umbrella. It's interesting when you look at the DBEs. We sold a giant project last week, like $112 million project, and now that we have all this data available, it's just interesting to see the different trends and, you know, how they're meeting the goal and like what the bidders, like they're, you know, using the same subs to fulfill the goal. With this 3-week period on the ODOT side, we're selling $112 million project, $80 million project, and then like maybe a $20 or $30 million in the same geographical area. So there's a huge concern about oversaturating the DBEs. So I've been pulling a lot of data, you know, just trying to ensure that. But with having this all under the same umbrella, that will be used even as consideration when we're setting goals on local LEP projects, because if we're saturating an area in the ODOT LEP side, then we won't want to, you know, set a higher goal on the local LEP side. So
we have a question from the Montgomery County engineer. Is district staff no longer involved in the process of bid opening and award? Are you referring to ODOT LEP projects or local LEP projects?
Yeah.
They don't have the review that they did have.
If you could clarify that question.
Yeah, Montgomery County engineer. Yeah, if you could clarify your question. I don't.
So we have a question, are the contractors getting these bidding requirements from ODOT, or are the LPAs required to inform the contractors? the LPAs are going to be required to inform the contractors of these requirements. Now, we are going to have some supplemental materials that we're going to provide, like a fact sheet, a flow chart that kind of outlines the process that supports what we're doing here today. But it's ultimately, that responsibility resides with the LPA because it is a local LEP project.
We are in the process of revising our bid doc template. That bid doc template, when we roll it out here in the next week or two, we'll have a link that will link to a guidance document that talks about the utilization and utilization plan and other requirements of Proposal Note 13.
The last question I see is a clarification. No, it would come straight to central office and be reviewed, and the approval would come out of central office.
These are great questions. We're going to be here as long as you have some for us, so you can keep sending them.
Looks like you got somebody.
Oh, it looks like we have somebody typing.
And if you guys think of questions after, feel free to just email us to get those answered.
Well, if there are no other questions, I think that we are going to sign off. We certainly appreciate your participation in the webinar today, and we are glad that you were able to sit in here with us for about an hour and learn a little bit more about the DBE program and how the DBE program and the local LEP program will work together. Actually, it looks like we have one more question. We'll try to answer that for you.
Yes, that's accurate. And then basically the low bidder, the requirement is in the proposal note for the low bidder to submit their affirmation. So it's partially correct. Yeah. The process will be very clearly laid out in the proposal note.
So there's one more question here. Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, but Larry, the ODOT doesn't necessarily notify the DBs to get their signature.
Correct.
It would be the prime contractor working that out. Yeah, it's their.
Cool. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
We are officially going to sign off. Please send any additional comments or questions that we're not able to get on the chat line here to us, and we will get those answered for you. Please remember that we do have LPA district managers who work with the locals directly, and they are also a great resource for you when answering your questions and working with you on these projects. So thank you for your time today, and we look forward to working with you on the DBE program.
Doing the work, it's just an extra that needs to be done, that shouldn't affect your final percentage in any way.